Do ectomorphs need different training than others? That's funny because I've read stuff over the years from different sources where I have seen it recommended that ectomorphs somehow are more easily overtrained than other body types. Ectomorphs being kind of your classic, kind of lanky, skinny guy that has a real hard time putting on weight. He's eating 3,000 calories a day, and training twice a week and still not gaining any weight and that sort of thing. It's not me. I can tell you that. I'm the opposite of that. But the skinny guy who can't put on weight, that's the ectomorph body type. And I've always seen these recommendations from people saying, ectomorphs need a lower volume because they can't recover as well as other body types. And here's the deal. Here's been my observation dealing with ectomorphs over the year. That body type is usually coupled with a low appetite. Those guys think that they're eating a lot and they're not. All right. What they think that a big meal, like, you ask them, did you eat a bit, what'd you have for lunch today? And they're like, oh man, I had a whole sandwich. Really? A whole sandwich? Like that's a snack. Okay. But to them, because they have a low appetite, they typically, they have a hard time getting down a lot of food. I've noticed that they don't have a big appetite. They're not hungry very often, and they get full really fast. And so I think this observation that somehow they don't respond well to training volume is more so that they're trying to impose a high training volume on people that are woefully inadequate in their caloric intake. And so then that has been somehow interpreted as ectomorphs can't handle training volume. And I think the correct answer is ectomorphs have a hard time getting food down, and they need to train themselves to eat more so that they can actually recover from a serious barbell program. That has been my observation over the years. It's that this body type does not want to eat, and they get 6 weeks into a barbell program and they're completely burned out because they are not eating enough protein, they're not eating enough total calories, and the problem is not their body type, it's their eating habits. I think ectomorphs, mesomorphs, endomorphs, whatever you want to call them, I do not think that there is a lot to that one body type needs, way more training volume, than another. I think it's, there's some individual variation in there, of course, but I definitely don't think ectomorphs need less training volume. If anything, they need more. They need more training volume and more food. So they need more of everything. That's my observation. Training a classical barbell program, but want to increase upper body size. What are your 3 or 4 favorite lifts for increasing upper body size? I don't know if I could break it down to 3 or 4. I would say definitely, bench and incline press, just with more volume. I would say, so your standard barbell movements, I'd say bench press, incline press, standing overhead press. So it's not so much the exercise selection that changes, but hypertrophy is mainly driven through increases in volume. So I would say, all of those exercises trained with more volume. I would say dips. I would say bent over rows and chins. If you can do the rows correctly, a lot of people can't. I prefer them done more in a bodybuilding style rather than the variation pulled from the floor. Not necessarily a Yates row, but just kind of your classic torso at 45, barbell rowed into the lower abs. For a lot of volume there. Chins and pull-ups, if you can. Definitely dips. And then I would say barbell curls for your arms. And then maybe some sort of, heavy tricep extension, lying tricep extension, or overhead tricep, something like that. But very basic: bench, incline, overhead press, chins, rows, barbell curl, lying tricep extension. Those are probably the biggest ones. So no secrets there. I mean, same thing every other person with any experience in the weight room would say. And then, your smaller movements, you kind of build onto there. What is your conditioning program? What I do for conditioning is I try to like to get something in twice a week. I would potentially do more if I, 1, wasn't as lazy, I guess, and 2, had more time, or 3 felt like I needed it. I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. And what do I measure that by? That's just how long do my workouts take me? How am I recovering in between sets and in between workouts? And, what is my pace during my strength training workouts? That's kind of my baseline for measuring my conditioning. If I was training for a UFC fight, I would be worried about having my conditioning a little higher than that. But basically what I like to do is usually at the conclusion of my squat and my deadlift workouts. So depending on how my week falls, I will train lower body 1 or 2 times a week. And so it just depends on, how many. I have basically 5 workouts that I do, and I try to get 5 in per week. 2 of which are lower body. I don't always get that. So lower body usually, but within usually like an 8 or 9 or 10-day period, I get my full week in. So sometimes my week is not 7 days. My week turns into like 8 or 9, sometimes even 10 days. And so after my lower body sessions, I'll do a squat and a deadlift, or a deadlift and a squat. I will do like a little circuit of some lower body exercises done light or with just body weight. And I go through those quickly. So it might be something like 90-degree back extensions, decline sit-ups, and reverse lunges or weighted step-ups, something like that. So it's usually an ab movement, and then like a single leg movement, like a step-up or a lunge, or and then like a movement for the posterior chain, like 45 or 90-degree back extension is my go-to. So I'll do like 3 movements like that, and I'll run through there with high reps, like 15 to 20 reps at a time, and I'll go through there like 3 to 5 times. So it provides a very moderate dose of a conditioning effect. It's not real high intensity conditioning, but I will do that, and I find that helps my work capacity. Kind of doing all those repetitions on the on the low back and the legs and that sort of thing. I'm conditioned to it now to where I don't get really sore from doing it, so it doesn't bleed over and affect my other workouts. So I had to kind of build up into that, but that's my favorite way to do it, is just like with the little body weight circuit type deal. Other times I will try once a week. I like to get out and drag the sled. I don't always do that, especially in the summertime when it's 105 outside. I just don't. So probably should anyways. But it's I like to do sled dragging once a week. It's kind of like a third lower body session. I always feel better recovered when I regularly drag the sled, and I always feel like nothing beats the sled for improving my conditioning on a high volume squat workout. Anytime I'm regularly doing sled dragging, I can get through high volume squats so much easier. So I usually do that. If I don't do that, then I will do generally at least once a week, I will do a session on the treadmill, and I will usually go about 40 or 45 minutes at a very high incline. Not running, just a power walk at the highest incline setting that the treadmill has, hands free. And I found that to have a similar effect to the sled. And that's just kind of a baseline kind of aerobic conditioning day. And so I'll do either the high incline treadmill or the sled, plus 1 or 2 days a week, I'll do the little circuit. And that's usually it. On occasion, I will get a wild hair and I will go over to the track at the local high school here, and I will run sprints. And those are 100-meter sprints. So that'll be like, that'll basically be like a mile of sprinting the straights, walking the curves. I like that as a workout as well. So, but a lot of times with my schedule, I generally work out in the middle of the day. And so I'm not able to get over to the high school and use their track because they got school going on in session. So it just kind of depends. So, but that's not one of my regular ones. That's just kind of something I do on occasion. So are sets of 10 better than sets of 5 for hypertrophy? I don't like this argument of either or. I think it's a ridiculous argument that somebody is only going to do one rep range or the other, and that if they want to get bigger, they have to pick doing sets of 5 or sets of 10. I have never seen a big bodybuilder that didn't do both. And so I think it's silly to try to pigeonhole that as are 5s better or 10s better. They have a different training effect. Let's not just say 5s and 10s. Let's say heavier weight for lower reps and lighter weight for higher reps, shorter rest periods, that sort of thing. There's a different training stress. And if you want to maximize, I would just say maximize your overall development, you should probably do both. Obviously, certain exercises lend themselves more to doing heavy sets of 5. Your basics, your squats, your deadlifts, your bench, your press, all the, the basic barbell stuff. I think no matter what your goals are, those should be generally trained heavy and lower reps. But there's no reason that you can't do any of those exercises, at the conclusion of a heavy sets of 5 workout. Why can't you pull some weight off the bar and knock out a set of 10 to 12 reps with that to try to get the benefits of the higher reps and also the lower reps? I have never trained with a very large lifter that didn't do both. I've never been around a lifter that did just sets of 10 that was really big, or let's say just lightweight high reps, and I've never been around one that only did lower reps. If you want to make your arms grow, for instance, you're going to do, let's say, curls and tricep extensions. Are you going to go over and do curls and tricep extensions for triples across? No, because the reality is you can't go in and do everything heavy. The heavy stuff is reserved for the basic barbell exercises and their derivatives. And then after that, you're typically going to, just for no other reason other than to save your joints, you're going to train with, a little bit higher rep range on those other movements. You can't go in and do heavy 5s across the board on everything. So to me, it's a ridiculous argument. I mean, we know the whole argument about the, sarcomeric hypertrophy versus sarcoplasmic, and, which one influences strength, and is sarcoplasmic hypertrophy even real, and this sort of thing, or what is its actual effects on strength? I can tell you that I think that they're both real, and that there is a response that your physique will have almost immediately if you've never, especially on a larger guy who has gotten himself strong on nothing but lower rep stuff. When he starts into the higher rep training like that, there's going to be a change in the physique almost immediately, a lot of which is a very short-term adaptation of just kind of increased storage capacity, of just pulling in water and glycogen. If you've never done an interesting little test to do on yourself is to see how that works is, like, say you've done nothing but doing sets of 5 for a number of years. You could even do it on a leg press. Go in and do like 5 sets of like 15 or 20 reps, but make it heavy. It can't be like bullshit reps, but 5 hard sets of 15, or go in there and do like some 10 to 12 rep squats, and then follow that up with a couple of assistance movements. In other words, do a high volume lower body leg workout, and you will wake up quite a bit heavier the next day. Your body, as a response to that, your body will pull in and hold on to a bunch of water, and it will hold it there. And actually, you'll notice that the rest of your upper body, even the part that you didn't train, will smooth over quite a bit. And I never understood that until I talked to my nutrition guy. He was saying that, his bodybuilders that he works with, their last leg workout is a week out from their show, because they're trying to get water. They're trying to get every last bit of water out of their system, and that any kind of higher volume leg training leading up to the show will cause them to pull in water and hold it, and they'll be smooth when they go in. So you'll have, now if you're trying to get bigger, holding on to that water is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's kind of a fun little experiment to run on yourself to see how that works. So anyways, if you're at a certain level of training advancement and you're trying to maximize hypertrophy, you need to do both. Does a novice need to go in and do sets of 10 to 15 on stuff? No, they don't. They can get by, again, on what is minimum effective dose for both increases in strength and hypertrophy, and that will be just your basic lower rep sets of 5 repeated over and over again, and that will kind of cover your bases for both your strength and hypertrophy type work. And trying to add in a bunch of higher rep stuff to like a basic novice progression is only going to slow down your progression, because it's going to make you sore, and you're not going to be able to recover and come back in 48 hours later and do another workout. So we save that stuff for further down the line. Last question, sticking points in the middle of each lift, how to correct and strengthen them. Let's say on the squat, I will say that most of the time, a lifter that is sticking in the middle of the squat, it is a technique issue. You should not really get stuck in the middle of a squat. You should, if you're going to get stuck because the weight's too heavy, you should get stuck at the bottom. If you get stuck in the middle, 99% of the time, in my opinion, it's because you abandoned your hip drive and you started pushing your hips forward and tried to lift your chest. In other words, the weight got really heavy, you panicked, and instead of maintaining your back angle and continuing to drive your hips up, you tried to lift your chest. This way, your hips come forward instead of up. You just pulled your hamstrings out of the movement for all intents and purposes, and you stick in the middle because now all of a sudden you're trying to complete the lift with less muscle mass than you started it with. The fix for the squat, in my opinion, is to get good at maintaining your technique through a heavy grinding rep, whether that's a heavy single or whether that's the last set of a heavy set of 5. Don't abandon your technique and try to stand straight up with the weight when you've been hip driving all the way up to that point, because you will get stuck. Okay, so I don't think that the squat requires a whole lot of like assistance work, because I don't think that most lifters that are technically efficient get stuck in the middle. As far as the bench and the press, I would say, can added tricep work help? Yes, but you can also train yourself on how to press more with speed. If you've never thought of speed as a consideration on any of your lifts, start thinking about it. Start incorporating it more on your warm-up sets. I'm not necessarily talking about using dynamic effort training directly, or that exact method, but start practicing moving your reps more explosively on your warm-up sets, and then apply that to your heavy work sets. Sometimes the cue to get a lifter that keeps getting stuck in the middle is push harder, press the weight harder. Sometimes that works really well. It works really well. Sometimes it's the most basic shit that gets you moving again. And so a lot of people, I think they get used to moving their warm-up sets with just the minimum amount of force necessary to get it up. And then they get to their heavy work sets and they apply that same approach. They kind of just the minimum amount of force necessary to get it moving off their chest. And that does not create enough velocity and acceleration out of the bottom to get them through a potential sticking point. So you need to be thinking about, on those heavier weights on the bench or the press, of moving it out of the bottom as explosively and as fast as possible. Now, it's not going to move fast or explosive because it's heavy, but you trying to do that will generate enough force on the bar to blast it through those sticking points. I do think bands can help. I haven't done a lot of work with chains, but I would assume it's similar effect. I do think that bands have their place on the bench, and I think they have their place on the deadlift as well, and the squat. I have actually done bands on the press as well, but it's pretty unstable, so I don't necessarily recommend that. But I think band training can help. I wouldn't do all of your work with bands, but occasionally throwing them in on a squat, deadlift, or bench is not a bad idea. Sticking points on the deadlift. Everybody goes to the rack pull. I would say, yeah, kind of, but I would also say that you need to think about it also a lot in terms of the of the bench and the press, of developing more speed and power off of the floor. Start pulling your reps, your warm-up sets faster. Get used to pulling with some explosive speed without sacrificing good setup. So sometimes with a deadlift, when you start talking about pulling with speed, a lifter goes to do that and they fuck up their mechanics. So make sure that you're not sacrificing your mechanics, but start trying to figure out how to apply more force to the bar right from that initial get-go, right when you're trying to lift it off, and you'll blow through a lot of those sticking points. So again, a lot of people just kind of think about applying just enough force to get the bar moving, and then it gets up to about knee height and it sticks, and then you can't complete the lift. Can rack pulls help? Yeah, I think they can, but I think that rack pulls are also a little bit overrated in terms of that. I think that pulling with the full range of motion and focusing on speed is probably almost a better approach for most people. I think it's an easier fix, for one. I've seen a lot of guys get stronger on a rack pull and then not have much carryover to their deadlift. So, and I've seen, of course, I've seen other people that swear by it. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So, you can try each approach and see what works for you, and go from there. So, all right, thanks for hanging in there with me. I hope this stuff helped. And if you guys like it, let me know in the comments section. Just give me a thumbs up or whatever, and we'll do another one in a week or so. So this is something that's easy to do, and I can put in as many of these as you guys want. So, all right, thanks a lot. Y'all have a good one.